Flying cars sweep across the night sky with neon lights shimmering below. Android robots are the new waiters in restaurants. A stranger sitting in the corner of a bar inserts a wire into the back of his head. In a second, he is already in a virtual reality where you can become anyone. This is how science fiction writers imagined our reality about 40 years ago. In this new episode of How It Was, we travel to the dark world of cyberpunk. You will find out which ideas of cyberpunk authors about the near future have already come true and which of them remain fiction. Discover why our skies are still not filled with flying cars, how Elon Musk brings cyberpunk ideas to life, and whether your dog can become immortal. The word cyberpunk was coined by American science fiction writer Bruce Bethke. In 1980 he wrote and in 1983 published a story about a high-tech society isolated from the rest of the world. I took a handful of roots, cyber, techno, et al., mixed them up with a bunch of terms for socially misdirected youth, and tried out the various combinations until one just plain sounded right, Bethke recalled. But although the term appeared in the 1980s, the movement itself originated much earlier. At the height of the Cold War between the US and the USSR, people dreamed of space travel. The launch of the first satellites, Gagarin's flight, the first spacecraft landing on the moon, it seemed that Earth's colonization of distant planets was not far off. A space odyssey by Stanley Kubrick in the TV series Star Trek and movie saga Star Wars have conquered the hearts of millions. Few writers remained on Earth in their thoughts, and they asked themselves, what would the world be like in 30 years? What impact would technology have on it? One such visionary was the American Philip Dick. His 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep? Where is the line between man and machine? The novel was written during a period of rapid labor automation. Robots began to displace people in factories and plants, and a new word, computer, came into use. Computers the size of a house were in scientific universities. Although they were significantly inferior to even the most primitive modern smartphones in terms of capabilities, even then they copied with some tasks better than people. It seemed that the only thing that prevents computers from surpassing humans in everything is a lack of computing power. In 1965, one of the pioneers of artificial intelligence, Herbert Simon, promised that in 20 years, machines would be able to do everything that humans do. This confidence was shared by many of those who worked with computers. Inspired by such predictions, writers and filmmakers published the AI hype to the masses. In 1970, the film Colossus, The Forbin Project, was released. Unexpectedly for the viewer, artificial intelligence appeared in the movie not as an assistant but as an enemy. The supercomputer Colossus, created by humans, gained intelligence and subjugated its creators. Against the backdrop of news stories about advances in computing, such a scenario raised concerns. What if this happens? What dangers are posed by artificial intelligence? Do we need it at all? In such reflections, a new direction of fiction was born, where laser swords and starships were replaced by technologies that, it seemed, were about to enter everyday life. And instead of a rainbow utopia, the writers envisioned a dark future where humanity pays for its technological arrogance. High-tech, low living standards, this formula has become the foundation of cyberpunk, Blade Runner, and Neuromancer. By the beginning of the 80s, dozens of works had already been written in this genre, but cyberpunk remained underground. The film that popularized the genre and caught the attention of millions was Blade Runner. Philip Dick's novel about androids haunted Ridley Scott. The director dreamed of embodying on the big screen a story in which artificial people defend their right to exist. Outlawed, pursued by hunters, the replicants flee from a remote colony on Earth to meet their creator. Slow storytelling and noir style became the hallmark of the film. The 2019 Los Angeles opening scene has become one of the most recognizable in cinematic history. Plumes of fire above the roofs of skyscrapers, cars flying across the sky, giant pyramids of the great corporations. In the early 80s, such a future looked real and frightening. The megacorporations that rule the world are an essential part of the cyberpunk creation. The writers were inspired by the successes of Apple, Sony, Microsoft. In a world where people can no longer do without technology, it seemed inevitable that all power would be concentrated in IT corporations. And if there is evil in this world, there are also those ready to fight it. Cyberpunk heroes are hackers and cyber samurai, whose weapons are technology and whose habitat is computer networks. A prime example is Henry Keyes from the Neuromancer by William Gibson. Many people call Gibson the father of cyberpunk. He coined the term cyberspace, which described his vision of the global computer network. The Neuromancer was published in 1984. The internet age had not yet begun, but computer networks had already united scientific universities and government organizations. Not everyone believed that this was the future. Gibson had no doubts. The heroes of his novels knew how to connect to the network directly through the nervous system. And the virtual world for them was far more real than that outside the window. Japan had a significant influence on cyberpunk and its image of the future. In the 1980s, the country had experienced rapid economical and technological growth. The Japanese gave the world a portable CD player and digital camera. Japanese cars looked futuristic. Gibson even called Japan the epitome of cyberpunk. Indeed, the Japanese version of the new genre was not long in coming. In 1982, the artist and screenwriter Katsuhiro Otomo created the manga Akira. The central theme of Japanese cyberpunk is transhumanism, a worldview in which a person is not the pinnacle of evolution. Instead, by adopting science and technology, we can improve ourselves. Transhumanism quickly gained adherents when the media started talking about advances in cybernetics, bioengineering, and artificial intelligence research. One of the main goals of transhumanism is the pursuit of immortality. Eternal life is a long-standing dream of humanity. History is full of examples of how people try to embody it. The search for the Holy Grail, the Fountain of Youth, the Philosopher's Stone. The development of computers and genetic engineering raised hopes that this dream would come true. The final stage of development in transhumanism is not even immortality, but complete unity with the machine. When a person and artificial intelligence become one flawless organism. The main character in the cult anime series Ghost in the Shell, Motoko Kusanagi, is a cyborg with highly advanced capabilities. From agonizing reflections on whether she has the right to consider herself a human when there is nothing human left in her body, she goes all the way to merge with the machine in which self-consciousness has awakened. The Ghost, released in 1995, had a budget of $10 million, making it the most expensive Japanese animated film to date. It raised the bar high in Japanese animation and showed Western audiences that anime is more than a mindless action movie. It can have a deep meaning. Expectations and reality. Almost 40 years have passed since the release of Blade Runner. The future that cyberpunk authors only imagined has come. Which of the predictions came true? It is now clear that the path to creating artificial intelligence has turned out to be longer than we thought. Fundamental problems remain intractable. For example, people can learn to solve entirely new problems. Computers are not capable of this. Any kind of artificial intelligence has an explicit specialization. Progress in robotics is slow. The humanoid robot Asimo, introduced in 2000, learned to carry a tray and push a cart. Animal-like robots from Boston Dynamics have amused viewers on YouTube, but so far, it's over. The social robot Sophia was given citizenship of Saudi Arabia, becoming the first robot to have a nationality. But despite the failure to create a thinking machine, artificial intelligence is used almost in every area. Diagnosing diseases, driving cars, facial recognition, robotic vacuum cleaners, and digital assistants like Siri. So, in some ways, the sci-fi authors were right. Artificial intelligence is already among us, but it does not all resemble the image of the all-knowing digital genius familiar to us from books and films. But the descriptions of the global web in cyberpunk fiction turned out to be surprisingly accurate. Millions of computers combined into one colossal cluster with limitless amounts of information. In the late 70s, free access to all the world's knowledge seemed as fantastic as androids and flying cars. Now the internet has become so firmly established in our lives that we can no longer imagine how we did without it before. And although we cannot connect our brain directly to the network, the development of neural interfaces is already underway. Elon Musk's Neuralink is developing technology to put microchips in people's brains. With its help, even paralyzed people will be able to connect directly to a computer. You can't surprise anyone with cybernetic prosthesis. There are dozens of videos on YouTube where the owner of mechanical arms demonstrates the ability to lift and carry fragile objects. Even healthy people voluntarily get implants. In 2018, several thousand residents of Sweden had microchips inserted into their hands to pay in stores without a card and speed up other daily routines. Portable communication devices have become another successful prediction of science fiction writers. The screen can be used not only to see the people you call, but also for studying documents and photographs and reading passages from books. Isaac Asimov. In the days of landline phones, mobile gadgets seemed like a technological miracle, but even those who wrote about them could hardly imagine what important role smartphones and tablets would play in our lives. In the case of flying machines, the reality did not progress as we expected. Writers would probably be disappointed to learn that 40 years later, there are no airways built over cities, even though the technologies necessary for this have been around for a long time. The reason is simple. The disadvantages of flying cars outweigh the advantages. Life in a city where cars rushed overhead would turn into a hell of continuous deafening noise. Considering the fuel prices, a grocery trip would cost you a fortune, and the traffic fumes would have finished off the already damaged ecology of our planet. Even the security issue remains unresolved. Any collision at the heights would cause both vehicles to collapse on the heads of passers-by. Perhaps someday humans will create engines powerful enough to lift electric cars into the air. Then they will fly quietly on autopilot, but this is unlikely to happen soon. But what you should definitely not count on is the embodiment of the coolest idea in cyberpunk, the transfer of consciousness to a digital medium. The prospect of this is as distant as it was 40 years ago. The human brain is so complex that we have not made much progress in studying it. This does not mean that the search for the Holy Grail is hopeless, but now scientists are hoping that a shorter route to life extension is through genetic engineering. Rejuvenate Bio claims that gene therapy has been able to stop the development of mitral valve heart disease in dogs. Of course, we're not talking about immortality, but according to scientists, these technologies can significantly increase the lifespan of pets. The founder of the company, renowned geneticist George Church, promises that such technology will soon be tested on humans. Interventions in the course of evolution are not to everyone's liking. Many people fear that playing God will not lead to anything good. Moreover, death is what makes us appreciate life. If you deprive a person of the endpoint of the path, life may become meaningless. The questions asked by the heroes of cyberpunk fiction have only become more relevant in our time. What do you think? Which of the technological miracles can become commonplace tomorrow? Where will we see the next breakthrough? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to press the bell icon and like it.